There was a time I believed love was the most dangerous thing in the world, because every time I opened my heart, it seemed to cost me more than I could afford to lose. I gave, I trusted, I hoped, and I fell. And each time I fell, I swore I would never let love have that kind of power over me again. But what I didn't realize back then was that love was never the enemy. My misunderstanding of love, my lack of boundaries, my inability to protect my own heart, that's what hurt me. The truth is, love itself is the most powerful force we have. It can destroy you if you misuse it, but it can also rebuild you into something unshakable if you learn to wield it with wisdom. Love didn't break me. How I used love broke me. And once I learned how to stand in my own worth, I realized that the very thing I thought was my weakness had become my greatest source of power. There was a time in my life when I thought love was measured by how much of myself I was willing to give up for another person. If they needed me, I was there, no matter the time, no matter the cost. If they wanted something, I would find a way to make it happen, even if it meant sacrificing my own needs, my own peace, and sometimes even my own dreams. I wore my ability to put someone else first like a badge of honor, thinking it made me loyal, devoted, and worthy of being loved in return. But what I didn't realize was that I wasn't practicing love at all. I was practicing self-abandonment, and when you abandon yourself long enough in the name of love, you don't just lose the person, you lose yourself too. I used to think the more I endured, the deeper my love must be. I told myself that staying through the hard times was noble, that swallowing my hurt and pretending I was fine was proof of commitment. I thought love was about how much pain I could take without breaking. But slowly, piece by piece, I began to notice something strange. While I was giving everything, they were giving less and less. My sacrifices didn't inspire them to love me more. They made them feel entitled to my effort. The more I bent, the more they expected me to bend. The more I gave, the more they took. And instead of bringing us closer, it created a one-sided connection that drained me until there was almost nothing left. I remember moments where I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that it was just a rough patch, that things would go back to the way they were in the beginning, that maybe if I could just love them harder, they would see my worth. But the truth is, when you have to work that hard to prove your value to someone, it's not love you're chasing, it's approval. And approval is a dangerous addiction, because no matter how much of it you get, it's never enough to fill the void inside you. What I failed to understand back then was that love is not meant to cost you your dignity. It's not meant to make you feel small or invisible. Love without self-respect is not love. It's submission to the idea that your needs, your feelings, and your identity are somehow less important than someone else's comfort. I thought saying yes to everything they wanted would keep them close, but in reality it was teaching them that my boundaries didn't exist, that my voice didn't matter, and that my value was tied to how convenient I could make their life. It took losing myself completely to understand this. I remember one day looking in the mirror and barely recognizing the person staring back at me. My spark was gone. My eyes looked tired. Not just physically, but like they had been carrying the weight of years of unspoken pain. I couldn't remember the last time I had done something just for me. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt truly happy without needing their approval to feel that way, and that's when it hit me. Love is not supposed to break you to keep someone else whole. When I finally started to rebuild myself, I had to face an uncomfortable truth. The reason love had felt like my weakness was because I had handed it over without protecting myself. I had given away my heart with no boundaries, no limits, and no self-respect to keep it safe. Love in its purest form is beautiful, but love without self-respect becomes a weapon, one that you turn against yourself, and I had been doing that for years, unknowingly. The day I decided to change wasn't dramatic. There wasn't some big fight or some perfect moment of clarity. It was a quiet decision I made in the middle of a very ordinary day. I just thought to myself, I can't keep doing this. I couldn't keep pouring into someone who saw my effort as a given, not a gift. I couldn't keep silencing my needs because I was afraid they'd leave if I spoke up. I couldn't keep playing small just to make them comfortable, and I certainly couldn't keep calling it love when it was costing me everything that made me who I am. At first, the idea of setting boundaries terrified me. I worried that saying no would make me lose them. I worried that standing up for myself would be seen as selfish. But what I didn't realize is that boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They are fences to protect it. Without boundaries, love becomes exploitation. With them, love becomes mutual respect. So I started small. I began to speak up when something hurt me, even if my voice shook. I stopped saying it's fine when it wasn't fine. I learned to pause before agreeing to something, to ask myself if it was truly what I wanted, or if I was just trying to avoid conflict. And slowly, something inside me began to shift. For the first time in my life, I started to feel strong in love instead of powerless in it. The beautiful thing about self-respect is that once you taste it, you can't go back. You can't unsee your worth once you've truly recognized it. The more I respected myself, the less tolerance I had for being treated poorly. The more I valued my time, the less I was willing to waste it on people who didn't see my effort. The more I spoke my truth, the less I feared losing people, because I realized the right people would never require me to betray myself to keep them. I began to understand that love without self-respect isn't love at all. It's dependency dressed up as devotion, and dependency keeps you in places you've outgrown because you're afraid of what will happen if you let go. But real love, the kind that grows, the kind that lasts, is built on two people who see each other as equals, who can meet each other's needs without either person having to disappear in the process. Looking back, I'm almost grateful for the pain I went through because it taught me the most important lesson of my life. You cannot truly love someone else until you've learned to love yourself enough to protect your own heart. Love is not about how much you can give before you break. It's about how much you can give while still standing strong, and that strength comes from self-respect. Now, when I love differently. I love with openness, but also with discernment. I give freely, but not blindly. I care deeply, but I never again forget to care for myself first. Because the truth is, love can still be powerful, beautiful, and all-consuming without being self-destructive. It can still move mountains without making you lose yourself in the rubble. The moment I realized that, love stopped being my weakness. It became my power, not because it made me untouchable, but because I finally understood that the most important relationship I will ever have is the one I have with myself. Every other love flows from that. And when you respect yourself, you attract people who respect you too. You stop settling for crumbs when you know you deserve the whole table. You stop clinging to people who treat you like an option because you know you are the prize. And you stop confusing pain with passion because you know love is supposed to feel safe, not suffocating. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self this. You don't have to lose yourself to prove you love someone. The people who truly deserve your love will never ask you to. They will want you to be your full self because that's the version of you they fell for. And the more you respect yourself, the more you'll realize that losing someone who doesn't value you isn't a loss at all, it's freedom. I used to think that setting boundaries would push people away, but what I've learned is that it actually filters out the ones who are never meant to stay. The ones who can't handle your self-respect aren't your people. The ones who love you for it, those are the ones worth keeping. Today, I can say with complete certainty that love is no longer my weakness because I no longer give it at the expense of myself. I give it as an extension of myself. I give it with intention, with clarity, and with strength, and in return, I attract the kind of love that feels like a partnership, not a prison. A love that celebrates who I am instead of trying to change me. A love that grows because it's built on mutual respect, not on one person carrying the weight of it all. And that's the truth I hope you hold on to. Love will only ever be your weakness if you use it as a substitute for self-worth. But if you build your worth from the inside out, love becomes a powerful force that enhances your life rather than consuming it. It stops being something you fear will hurt you and starts being something you know will heal you. And when you reach that point, you'll look back on all the times you thought love was your downfall and realize it was never love that broke you. It was the absence of love for yourself. When I think back to the times love felt like my weakness, one of the patterns I see so clearly now is how tightly I used to hold on. I thought holding on meant I cared. I thought clinging to someone was proof that my love was real. I told myself that if I just tried hard enough, if I stayed close enough, if I never let them feel the distance between us, then maybe they'd never leave. What I didn't see then was that the more I tried to grip love like something fragile, the more it slipped through my fingers. I confused possession with connection, control with commitment, and fear with devotion. I didn't realize that love isn't meant to be held like a hostage. It's meant to breathe, to grow, to exist in freedom. When love was my weakness, I was terrified of losing it. Every argument felt like a potential ending. Every delay in their reply made my stomach knot with dread. If they seemed distant, I would push closer, hoping my presence could pull them back. I didn't understand that love given out of fear is not really love. It's desperation. And desperation makes you act in ways that aren't truly you. It makes you shrink yourself just to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. It makes you say yes when you mean no, just to avoid the risk of them walking away. It makes you beg for scraps when deep down you know you deserve the feast. I used to think love was about two people holding on for dear life. But now I see it differently. Real love doesn't need to be clung to. It needs to be chosen every day by both people. When you love someone from a place of freedom, you don't need to grip them so tightly because you trust that if they want to be there, they will be. That's the difference between love as weakness and love as power. When love is your weakness, you think you have to keep it locked in a cage to stop it from flying away. When love is your power, you know that if it's meant for you, it will choose to stay without the cage. There were so many times in my past where I held on to people who were already halfway out the door. I ignored the signs, the conversations that grew shorter, the eyes that no longer lit up when they saw me, the way their touch became an obligation rather than a desire. I convinced myself that if I could just love them harder, I could make them remember why they fell for me in the first place. But love doesn't work that way. You can't force someone to feel something they've stopped feeling, no matter how much of yourself you give. All that happens is you lose yourself trying to keep someone who has already decided to go. I remember the exhaustion of that kind of love, the constant analyzing, the endless wondering if I'd done something wrong, the feeling of always being on edge, ready to fix whatever was slipping away. I thought I was fighting for us, but really I was just fighting to not be left alone. That's not love. That's fear disguised as loyalty, and fear will drain you faster than heartbreak ever will. The shift happened when I finally understood that letting someone go doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you didn't love enough or try hard enough. Sometimes it simply means the chapter has ended, and the healthiest thing you can do is close the book with gratitude instead of trying to rewrite it. I began to see that holding on to someone who no longer wants to be held doesn't protect love. It suffocates it, and in suffocating them, you also suffocate yourself. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you learn to let go with grace. At first, it feels impossible. You want to resist, to grab, to pull back what's slipping away. But once you understand that love isn't meant to be forced, something inside you relaxes. You realize you don't have to chase what is already yours, and if it's not yours, chasing it will only push it further away. Love given freely is the most beautiful thing in the world, but love demanded is just control wearing a softer mask. Letting go doesn't mean you stop loving someone. It means you stop trying to make them love you in the way you want. It means you respect their journey enough to allow them to walk it without dragging them back into your story. It means you have enough faith in yourself to know that even if they go, you will still be whole. That's the part I didn't believe for a long time, that I could still be whole without them. I thought love was the glue that held me together. I thought without them I would shatter, but the truth is I wasn't held together by love. I was held together by the belief that I wasn't enough on my own. Once I let go of that belief, I began to see that I could be my own foundation. The irony is, when I stopped gripping so tightly, I actually began to experience deeper, healthier love. Because freedom in love doesn't mean distance, it means trust. It means knowing that you can both have space to grow as individuals without losing your bond. It means understanding that love isn't about merging into one person. It's about walking side by side, each with your own strength, your own dreams, your own identity, and choosing each other again and again without force. I also learned that sometimes letting go isn't about losing the person, but about losing the version of the relationship that no longer serves you. You can let go of the control, the fear, the possessiveness, and still keep the love if both people are willing to grow. But if they're not, you have to be willing to walk away rather than hold onto something that's already turned into a memory. The old me would have thought that was cold. The old me would have said, if you really love someone, you never let go. But the wiser me now knows that sometimes the greatest act of love for them and for yourself is to release them. Because love isn't about possession, it's about choice, and choice loses its meaning if it's made under pressure. There's a beautiful strength in being able to say, I love you, but I will not hold you here against your will. It shows that you value love enough to not reduce it to control. It shows that you value yourself enough to not settle for a love that needs to be dragged forward instead of freely given. It shows that you trust that what is meant for you will come willingly, without you having to beg for it to stay. I wish I had learned that sooner. I wish I could have saved myself years of trying to grip what was already gone. But in a way, I'm grateful for the times I couldn't let go, because they taught me the difference between a love that expands you and a love that imprisons you. They taught me that when love is your power, it doesn't matter if someone leaves. You won't collapse because you know your worth isn't tied to their decision. You can love with your whole heart, but if that love needs to end, you can also walk away with your whole heart intact. Now, when I love, I don't cling, I don't try to own, I don't demand proof every second that they're not going anywhere. I love with open hands, not clenched fists. And ironically, that's what makes the love I have now stronger than any love I had before, because it's built on freedom, and freedom breeds loyalty far more than control ever could. And maybe that's the secret I want you to remember. The tighter you grip, the more you lose. The more you trust, the more you gain. If you can learn to love without fear, to give without chains, to hold without trapping, you'll find that love doesn't weaken you. It makes you unshakably strong. Not because you've locked it in place, but because you know that no matter what happens, you'll be okay. That's the power that comes when you stop clinging and start trusting. When you stop trying to keep love and start allowing it to be. There was a time when I thought love was about giving everything I had, no matter what it cost me. If I was tired, I would still show up. If I was hurting, I would still put on a smile. If my own needs were screaming for attention, I would hush them so I could focus on theirs. I believed that love meant pouring all of myself into another person, thinking that somehow, someway, they would pour it back into me. But over time, I began to realize that what I was giving wasn't love in its healthiest form. It was desperation disguised as devotion. I was giving from a place of emptiness, and when you give from emptiness, you're not truly giving. You're trading. You're hoping that if you give enough, someone will fill you back up. But the cruel truth is, that's not how it works. When love was my weakness, I didn't see the danger in that cycle. I thought that if I just kept giving, the other person would eventually notice my effort and repay it. I thought that if I proved my loyalty, my sacrifice, my endless patience, then they would finally treat me the way I wanted to be treated. But love given from a place of need is unsteady. It wobbles because it's always waiting for something in return. It creates an unspoken pressure, a silent contract where the giver and receiver aren't really equal. I wasn't loving freely. I was loving with strings attached, even if I didn't realize it. It's easy to fall into that trap when you've been taught that your worth comes from how useful you are to others. I grew up believing that being selfless was the highest form of love, and don't get me wrong, there's beauty in generosity. There's beauty in showing up for the people you care about, but there's a fine line between generosity and self-erasure. I didn't know where that line was. I gave until I was drained, then blamed them for not noticing how much it cost me. I told myself they were ungrateful, but deep down I knew I had been giving without taking responsibility for my own limits. The turning point came when I found myself completely burnt out, not just in relationships, but in life. I had nothing left to give to anyone, and it felt like no one was there to give anything back to me. I was exhausted, bitter, and quietly resentful, even though I kept telling myself I was fine. That's when I realized that I had been making a huge mistake. I had been treating love like a well that could never run dry, but I wasn't refilling it. I was so focused on pouring into others that I had forgotten to pour into myself. When I finally stopped to look at what I had been doing, the truth was painful. I wasn't loving people because I was full of love. I was loving them because I was starving for it. I was hoping that if I gave enough, I could earn the love I didn't know how to give myself. And the problem with that is, when you give from emptiness, your love becomes heavy. It comes with an unspoken plea. Please give this back to me. It stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling like a debt. And that's when relationships begin to crumble. I began to understand that love only becomes powerful when you give it from overflow, not from lack. When you give from overflow, you're not looking for a return. You're sharing something you already have in abundance. You can give without fear of running out because your love isn't dependent on someone else's approval or reciprocation. That's when love feels light, effortless, and real. So I made a decision to start filling my own cup first. At first, it felt selfish. I wasn't used to putting myself before others. I felt guilty for saying no, for resting when I needed to, for prioritizing my own dreams and happiness. But over time, I saw how much stronger, calmer, and happier I became when I took care of myself first. The love I had to give wasn't frantic anymore. It wasn't desperate or anxious. It was steady. It was generous because it didn't come from a place of scarcity. I started doing things that made me feel alive, not because they would impress anyone, but because they brought me joy. I reconnected with hobbies I had abandoned, spent time with people who made me laugh, and learned to enjoy my own company. I began setting boundaries not to push people away, but to protect the energy I needed to keep myself whole. And slowly I felt a shift, not just in me, but in my relationships. The more I loved myself, the more I attracted people who loved me in the same way. Without conditions, without games, without keeping score. And even more importantly, the love I gave started to feel pure again. I no longer gave because I needed to get something back. I gave because it was natural for me to share what I already had. When someone couldn't reciprocate, I didn't feel resentful. I simply recognized that they weren't capable of meeting me where I was, and I chose to put my energy elsewhere. This is the difference between love as weakness and love as power. When love is your weakness, you give from a place of emptiness, hoping it will be filled. You compromise your well-being just to keep someone close. But when love is your power, you give from overflow. You take care of yourself so well that the love you offer is a reflection of your own abundance, not a desperate attempt to fill a void. There's also a quiet confidence that comes with this kind of love. You no longer feel afraid that someone will take advantage of your kindness because you know your worth and you protect it. You don't give endlessly to someone who doesn't value it because you respect yourself too much to keep pouring into a cup with holes. You stop chasing people because you realize that your love is a privilege, not a commodity. And perhaps the most liberating part of all is this: when you give from overflow, you don't fear love running out. You don't panic if someone leaves because your source of love isn't them, it's you. You understand that as long as you keep nurturing yourself, you'll always have love to give, and you'll always have love within you, even if no one else is around to reflect it back. Looking back now, I can see how much pain I caused myself by giving from emptiness. I thought I was being strong, but really I was wearing myself down. I thought I was being loving, but I was just afraid of being unloved. Learning to fill my own cup first changed everything. It didn't make me harder or colder. It made me warmer because my love wasn't tangled up with fear anymore. I think the world teaches us a dangerous lie, that love is proven by how much you sacrifice yourself for another person. But real love, the kind that lasts and builds rather than breaks, is not about losing yourself. It's about becoming so full of love for yourself and your life that sharing it becomes effortless. You are no longer giving to survive, you are giving to thrive. And that changes the entire energy of your relationships. So now when I love from a place of fullness. I make sure I am nourished emotionally, mentally, and spiritually before I try to nourish anyone else. I protect my own joy because I know it is the foundation for the joy I can bring to others, and I no longer confuse martyrdom with love. I no longer think that burning myself out for someone is proof of devotion. My devotion is shown in the steadiness of my love, the consistency of my care, and the fact that I can give without expecting something in return, because I already have enough. If there's one truth I could pass on from all of this, it's this: you can't pour from an empty cup, and you shouldn't try. Love yourself enough to fill your own cup first. Build a life so rich in meaning that your love is an extension of your happiness, not the source of it. When you do that, you'll find that love no longer leaves you exhausted or afraid. It becomes the most powerful force in your life, because it's no longer something you're trying to get, it's something you already are. There was a point in my life where I thought loving someone automatically meant they were worthy of my love. If my heart felt something, I assumed it was enough reason to keep giving, keep trusting, keep showing up. I didn't stop to ask myself if they had earned my loyalty, my time, my energy. I didn't think about whether their actions matched their words or if their presence in my life was actually making it better. I just gave, and I gave without question. I believed that to love was to give without limit, that my ability to love anyone was proof of my strength. But the reality was far more painful. I was handing out something precious to people who didn't value it, and every time I did, I chipped away at my own sense of worth. I used to think that being open-hearted was the most beautiful quality a person could have. And yes, there is beauty in being open, but there's also vulnerability, and if you're not careful, that vulnerability becomes a door you leave wide open for the wrong people to walk through. When love was my weakness, I didn't have a filter. Anyone who showed me a little bit of kindness or attention could have access to me. I mistook interest for intention, charm for character, and attention for affection. I wanted to believe the best in everyone, but in doing so, I often ignored the truth staring me in the face, that not everyone comes into your life to love you. Some come to use you, some come to take what they can, and some come simply because it benefits them in the moment. I didn't want to believe that. I wanted love to be this pure, unconditional thing I could give freely, no matter what, and in a perfect world, maybe it could be, but in the real world, love without discernment is dangerous. It makes you an easy target for people who see kindness as a weakness to exploit, and the worst part is you don't even notice it happening at first. It starts small, little moments where they take without giving, little ways they show you that your feelings are optional to them. You brush it off because you want to believe they'll be better next time, but slowly you start to realize that next time never comes. I learned this lesson the hard way, through relationships and friendships where I was always the one carrying the weight. I was the one making the plans, initiating the conversations, holding things together when they were falling apart. I would convince myself it was just a rough patch, that if I kept loving them the way I did in the beginning, they would eventually match my effort. But here's what I learned: when someone truly values you, they don't need to be convinced to show up. They don't need to be begged, reminded, or guilt-tripped into treating you with respect. They do it naturally because they want to, not because you demand it. The moment that changed everything for me was realizing that love, while beautiful, is not limitless when it comes to who you give it to. Your love is a gift, not a debt. It's not something you hand out to everyone who crosses your path just because you're capable of giving it. I used to think my willingness to love everyone was proof of how big my heart was. But I see now that a big heart is not measured by how much you give, it's measured by how wisely you choose where to give it. Once I understood that, I started becoming more intentional with my love. I began asking myself, does this person's presence in my life inspire me, support me, and align with my values? I started looking at actions over words, patterns over promises. I stopped getting caught up in potential and started paying attention to reality, and that shift was powerful, because when you become selective about who you love, you stop wasting energy on people who were never going to meet you where you are. You stop trying to turn takers into givers. You stop trying to fix someone in the hope they will one day appreciate you the way you deserve. That's when love starts to become a source of power instead of pain. Because now, instead of spreading yourself thin trying to keep everyone happy, you focus your love on those who have proven they can cherish it. You start building relationships where the giving is mutual, where you don't have to question whether you matter to them. You start to feel safe in your love because you're not leaving it in careless hands. It took me years to understand this, and even longer to apply it. The hardest part was letting go of people I genuinely cared about, simply because they couldn't love me in a healthy way. I wanted to believe that my love could change them, but love is not a cure for someone's unwillingness to grow. You can inspire someone to change, but you can't make them. And staying in the hope that they will eventually become the person you need them to be only drains you and delays your own healing. Now I see love differently. I see it as something sacred, something worth protecting. I don't hand it over to just anyone anymore, not because I'm cold or closed off, but because I understand its value. The same way you wouldn't leave a priceless piece of jewelry lying around for anyone to take, you shouldn't leave your love lying open for anyone to claim. When you protect your love, you're not making it smaller, you're making it stronger. You're ensuring that when you do give it, it's going to someone who will hold it with the same care you give it with. The more I honored my own love, the more I noticed something beautiful. The people who stayed in my life after I raised my standards were the ones who truly valued me. They weren't there because it was easy or convenient. They were there because they wanted to be. And when love comes from that place of mutual respect and choice, it's unshakable. You no longer have to worry about being used because the people around you aren't there to take. They're there to give too. I used to fear that being selective would make me lonely. But in reality, it made me more fulfilled than ever. Yes, my circle became smaller, but it became stronger. I no longer feel drained by one-sided connections. I no longer question whether someone truly cares. I no longer stay up at night wondering why I'm not enough for them, because I finally understand. I am enough. I always was. The problem was never me. The problem was that I was giving the best parts of myself to people who weren't capable of seeing it. Now I choose differently. I choose to invest my love in people who invest back. I choose to spend my time with people whose actions match their words. I choose relationships where my love is appreciated, not taken for granted. And because of that, my love no longer feels like something that leaves me empty. It feels like something that keeps growing, because it's being shared with people who nurture it. That's the real shift, from love as weakness to love as power. When love is your weakness, you give it away without thinking about who's receiving it. You hand it over to anyone, hoping they'll see its worth. But when love is your power, you guard it like the rare and beautiful thing it is, only sharing it with those who have proven they can honor it. And in doing so, you not only protect your heart, you allow your love to thrive. There came a time when I realized that the way I saw love wasn't the problem. It was the way I allowed love to be treated in my life. I had always been someone who believed love was the greatest force in the world, the thing that could heal, transform, and connect people on the deepest level. And I still believe that, but I also learned that love on its own is not enough to build a life with someone. Love needs respect, trust, commitment, and a willingness to grow. Without those things, love can turn into a battlefield, a place where your heart gets wounded over and over again in the name of something that should never hurt you that way. When love was my weakness, I thought enduring pain was part of the proof that I loved deeply. I thought that if I stayed through the hard times, if I forgave endlessly, if I accepted less than I deserved, it made my love stronger. But now I see that real strength in love isn't in how much pain you can endure, it's in how much you're willing to protect your heart from it. There's a difference between fighting for love and fighting against constant harm, and too often I confused the two. I stayed in situations where my heart felt heavy every single day, telling myself that it was just a rough season, that love requires sacrifice. And yes, love does require sacrifice, but not the kind that asks you to sacrifice your self-worth, your joy, and your peace of mind. If love is costing you your peace, it's too expensive. If it's draining the very life out of you, it's not love. It's dependency, attachment, or fear disguised as love. The transformation came when I finally understood that love can be powerful only when it's also paired with boundaries. Without boundaries, love becomes something that erodes you instead of something that strengthens you. Boundaries are not walls, they don't shut people out. They're gates, and you get to decide who comes through. They're the lines that say, this is how I deserve to be treated, this is the respect I expect, this is what I will and will not accept. And here's the truth. When you start living with boundaries, people who were only in your life because they could take advantage of your kindness will start to fall away, and at first, that's going to hurt. It will feel like loss, but over time you will see that it was actually the start of gaining your power back. When love became my power, I stopped thinking that letting go was failure. Letting go isn't failure, it's one of the highest forms of self-respect. It's saying, I love myself enough to walk away from something that diminishes me, even if I still love the person. That's hard. Loving someone and still leaving them is one of the most difficult things you'll ever do. But sometimes the greatest act of love, for yourself and even for them, is to walk away so you can both grow in ways you can't while you're together. One of the most life-changing shifts for me was realizing that the love I had been so desperate to find in others had to first exist in me. I had spent years looking for someone to fill the spaces in me that I didn't know how to fill myself. I looked for validation, for reassurance, for someone to tell me I was enough. But when you give someone else the job of making you feel worthy, you're handing over the keys to your happiness. And the moment they decide to leave or stop giving you that validation, you're left feeling empty again. That's why so many people jump from relationship to relationship. They're chasing the feeling of worthiness they think love will give them without realizing it's something only they can create from within. When I started building that love for myself, everything changed. I no longer chased people who treated me like an option. I no longer begged for attention from someone who was too busy to give it. I no longer tried to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it. Because I already knew I was enough, my love for myself became the standard by which I measured every other love in my life. If someone couldn't match or respect the way I treated myself, they didn't get access to me. And here's the beautiful part: when you operate from that place of self-love, you stop fearing the loss of other people. You realize that anyone who leaves is simply making space for someone who is better aligned with your life. You stop trying to hold on to relationships that hurt you just because you're afraid of being alone. You understand that solitude is not the absence of love, it's the presence of self. You learn to enjoy your own company, to build a life that feels full even without a romantic partner. And when love comes along from that place, it's no longer about filling a void, it's about sharing abundance. That's when love becomes a power unlike anything else, because it's no longer something you're desperate to find, it's something you carry with you wherever you go. You're not searching for someone to complete you because you're already whole. You're not trying to convince someone to love you because you already know your worth. You're not settling for less than you deserve because you'd rather be alone than in a relationship that diminishes you. The irony is that when you reach this point, love from others flows into your life more naturally than ever before. People are drawn to someone who stands in their power, who loves themselves without arrogance but with certainty. You attract healthier connections because you no longer tolerate the unhealthy ones. And the love you share in those relationships is richer, deeper, and more enduring, because it's built on a foundation of mutual respect, trust, and choice, not fear or dependency. I look back at the version of me who thought love was something that happened to her, like a force of nature she couldn't control, and I want to tell her, you are the force. You decide where your love goes, who gets to receive it, and how much it grows. I want to tell her that love doesn't have to leave you feeling powerless, small, or broken. It can be the very thing that makes you feel unstoppable, when you pair it with self-respect, when you guard it with boundaries, and when you give it to yourself first. Now, I see love as a source of strength that flows from me, not something I'm trying to grasp from outside. I've learned that my love is not just an emotion. It's a choice, a commitment, and a standard I live by. It's the way I speak to myself when no one is listening. It's the way I refuse to accept less than I deserve. It's the way I walk away from people who cannot or will not treat me with the same care I give them. And here's the most empowering truth of all. When love becomes your power, you realize you don't need to fear heartbreak anymore. Heartbreak might still happen. You might still lose people you care about, but it will never break you. Because you are not defined by who stays or who leaves. You are defined by how you choose to love, and that choice is always yours. You hold the pen, you write the story, and in your story, love is not the thing that weakens you. It's the very thing that makes you stronger than you've ever been.